All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming out. Give everyone just another minute. We have a lot of great information to talk about today. It's a little dreary where I am in Virginia. Not sure how the weather is everywhere else. Deep, how's
Yeah,
the weather where you are?
pretty sunny outside.
Oh, that's good. Oh, good. Sunny in Phoenix.
It's always sunny in Phoenix, isn't it?
I know. I know. Maybe
Mhm.
that's where our next roundtable should be.
Right.
We'll
Yeah,
take a road trip.
that's right.
All right. Well, it's great to see so many people on here. I'm so glad that you could make time to join us today. And we actually have a lot to cover, so I think I'll go ahead and get started. Okay, great. So, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Han Group's quarterly nonprofit roundtable. And as many of you know, Han Group is a public accounting and advisory firm exclusively serving nonprofits nationwide. In addition to helping nonprofits strengthen their financial credibility, we're also committed to fostering a vibrant nonprofit community by connecting leaders, promoting best practices, and driving sector wide advancements. So, thanks to all of you for being a part of our community. I'm Heather Johnson, one of the partners at Han Group, and I'll be the facilitator today. And the theme for today's roundtable is Ask the Experts, which I'm very excited about. In addition to our Han Group experts, we've also invited special guests to speak on nonprofit, legal, and banking topics. So thanks to everyone that sent in questions in advance. I have shared them with our guests and we'll answer as many as we can today. If there are any that we don't get to, we'll be happy to follow up. So with that, I'm going to introduce our speakers, give our guests around 10 minutes each to talk, and then we'll open the floor for questions. And I am going to hopefully share my screen now. I'll be toggling on and off between sharing the screen. Okay, great. So many of our partners are on the call today, and we represent a wide range of services from audit, accounting, although not on the same client, advisory, tax, and technology. We're all deeply committed to the nonprofit community. And in addition, we have our senior tax team and several of our managers and senior managers on the call and ready to answer questions as well. Now it's my pleasure to welcome our first guest speaker, Jeff Tannenbaum. Jeff is widely regarded as one of the nation's leading nonprofit attorneys and is also an accomplished author, lecturer, commentator, and expert witness on nonprofit legal matters. As managing partner of the nationally recognized Washington, D.C. based Tannenbaum Law Group, a six-attorney boutique firm focused exclusively on the legal needs of nonprofits, Jeff counsels his clients on the broad array of legal and sensitive business and governance issues affecting nonprofits. Among numerous other honors and awards, Jeff was named Best Lawyers 2026 Lawyer of the Year for Nonprofit Charities Law in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. He was the recipient of Association Trends and CEO Updates 2025 Association Industry Partner of the Year Award. He was the 2006 recipient of the American Bar Association's Outstanding Nonprofit Lawyer of the Year Award. He has been one of only a handful of leading lawyers in the prestigious U.S. Legal 500 not for profit rankings over the years, and is one of only five lawyers in the U.S. Legal 500's not for profit Hall of Fame. Not bad, Jeff. So every year for well over a decade, Jeff has been listed in the nonprofit categories of best lawyers and super lawyers. Jeff is the author of the ASAE published book, Association Tax Compliance Guide, which is only slightly more popular than his second and much more interesting book, Quarantine Cocktails. He currently serves as chair of the American Bar Association's Trade and Professional Association Subcommittee and on several ASAE committees and councils. So I'm hoping I can't see everybody on the call, but Jeff, are you on here?
I'm here.
Okay, great. So with that, Jeff, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks for the kind introduction. So I've been given 10 minutes to speak on whatever hot button nonprofit legal issues I have time to speak about. So obviously that's not much, and there's a lot going on these days. Um, so a few things to say on this front. First off, despite the fact that there are a lot of new and hot button legal issues that are keeping our nonprofit clients and other nonprofits up at night. Everything from cuts in federal grants and other federal funding to scrutiny of DEI policies, practices, and initiatives, um, to an administration's focus on, targeting left-leaning nonprofit organizations in a variety of ways, including through the criminal prosecution system as well as through the IRS, potential threats to tax-exempt status. We were dealing with a lot of potential threats to the sector through the big beautiful bill that was passed earlier this year. Turned out most of those threats ended up going away before the bill was enacted in its final form. We're also dealing with a lot of challenges relating to AI and how nonprofits are dealing with it from a legal perspective, employee and volunteer leader usage policies and practices, and what sort of guardrails are nonprofits putting into place in connection with AI to protect themselves from a legal perspective. So these are a lot of the kind of new hot button issues. But as I know, and my other five attorney colleagues in my firm know every day from the work we do day in and day out for our clients, while we're certainly spending some time on those issues, the other issues that have been around forever, I've been doing this for 30 years now, nothing but representing nonprofits as outside counsel, and the issues that I've been counseling clients on even 30 years ago are still around today. Everything from federal tax exemption compliance generally and unrelated business income tax to contract reviews, hotel, convention center, and meeting contracts and liability issues, all sorts of employment related issues. Every nonprofit, at least every nonprofit that has employees, deals with all sorts of employee issues from discrimination and harassment and terminations. We do a lot of internal investigations, disability accommodations, protection of your copyrights and trademarks and making sure they don't infringe others, and dealing with all sorts of infringement allegations, dealing with the regulation of lobbying and political campaign activity, mitigating antitrust risk for the trade and professional associations, nonprofit fundraising regulation, dealing with gift agreements and gift acceptance policies and gift restrictions, dealing with the regulation of charitable fundraising and commercial co-ventures, particularly at the state level. We do a lot of work when it comes to chapter subsidiaries and affiliates. We do a lot of work with respect to nonprofit M&A, mergers and acquisitions, all different sorts of mergers and combinations between nonprofits and even involving for-profits sometimes as well, creating multiple kind of complex subsidiary structures, often involving for-profits as well. This is just a handful of the issues that we deal with for our clients every day and that your nonprofit organizations, your nonprofit clients are probably dealing with. And I think that's the point of all of that is to say that while kind of the new sexy hot button issues that everyone is concerned about and are getting all the attention and getting all the press. I just wrapped up an interview with the Chronicle of Philanthropy on the administration's new memo that came out last week, instructing DOJ and Treasury and the IRS to target kind of left-leaning tax-exempt organizations and others that it believes are fomenting domestic terrorism and violence in the homeland. Those are the issues that are getting everyone's attention, that everyone's reading about. But the legal issues, like the ones that I just rattled off and many others like that, are equally important, if not more so, to protecting your organization, mitigating its legal risk and whatnot. And then the last thing I'll say is on the DEI front, while this has been the topic of a lot of discussion, it's been a topic we've probably conducted at least 36 DEI related reviews for different clients, analyzing all of their programs, initiative, governance structures, employment practices, scholarship programs, grant programs to help identify where there is legal and non-legal risk from their DEI initiatives. While this kind of focus really started on January 20th and 21st of this year when President Trump signed two kind of anti-DEI focused executive orders. The issues have really been going on in earnest for the last 2+ years, really since the U.S. Supreme Court's June 2023 decision involving college admissions and concluding that it was both unconstitutional and illegal under federal law to engage in what's essentially reverse discrimination on the basis of race and other protected characteristics in college admissions. That whole kind of wholesale adoption of kind of the reverse discrimination line of thinking, in that case in college admissions, has now been, as we predicted and has in fact happened, been applied in other contexts, particularly through private litigation. And we've been seeing this private litigation ever since that Supreme Court decision. In fact, it really started with the same gentleman who brought those college admissions cases, Ed Blum. Ed Blum, he formed another conservative nonprofit called the American Alliance for Equal Rights and started bringing litigation against both nonprofits and for-profits, alleging, for instance, that their grant and scholarship and fellowship programs are illegal because they discriminate in contracting on the basis of race. This derives from something called Section 1981 of the original Civil Rights Act of 1866, which makes it illegal to discriminate in contracting on the basis of race. And Ed Blum's group started bringing essentially reverse discrimination lawsuits against nonprofits such as the Fearless Fund and the American Bar Association and others, alleging that their grant and scholarship programs, because they had race-based eligibility criteria, among other eligibility criteria where people were only eligible for the grants or scholarships that they had certain protected characteristics, including race, that those programs, because they involve a contract, discriminate against people that don't have those protected characteristics, for instance, white males, in contracting. And frankly, most of those cases have been successful. In the Fearless Fund case, there was a 11th Circuit Court of Appeals decision finding that the plaintiffs were likely, there was a substantial likelihood of them prevailing on the merits. In almost all the other cases, the plaintiffs have rolled over and either abandoned their programs or changed their eligibility criteria to eliminate the race-based criteria. And so that's just one example of legal risk that predated this administration and continues to this day. The one last thing I'll also talk about, besides the contracting on the basis of race, is employment. There was a unanimous U.S. Supreme Court decision this year that basically said there used to be a much higher procedural bar for a member of a majority class, like a non-minority class, to bring an employment discrimination suit. And effectively, it made it really difficult to bring those sorts of cases. The U.S. Supreme Court unanimously ruled this past June that should not be the case. It is no longer the case. And whether you're a member, in this case, it involved a straight white woman who was bringing a claim that she was discriminated against in employment in favor of two gay women. The court agreed with her and said there should be no higher procedural bar. So what we are already seeing since then is more reverse discrimination cases being brought in employment by members of majority classes. And it's a significant risk area for every nonprofit employer and something that you should definitely focus on. So I think I've hit my allotment of time, Heather. I will turn the mic back over to you, so to speak, but certainly would be happy to answer any questions later on.
Thank you, Jeff. That's very interesting, and I'm sure that we will have questions following up. Next, I would like to introduce you to Len Wren, a banking, business strategy, and financial structure professional. Len has over 25 years of experience with various financial institutions, presently holding a leadership role with First Citizens Bank, a top 20 bank with over $200 billion in assets, where he manages a team of business and commercial bankers. During a slight detour from his banking career, Len spent 6 years developing and growing a mid-sized, vertically integrated international company where he was responsible for the growth within specific international segments, as well as the formulation of the overall growth strategy of the firm. Len's education includes a JD from Cleveland Marshall College of Law and an MBA from John Carroll University. Additionally, Len has meritoriously served our country during his 4 years with the United States Air Force. Thank you, Len. And outside of his core competencies in banking, business development, and management, Len's interests include international affairs, travel, history, and literature. So take it away, Len.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Wow. How do you how do you top that intro? Thank you very much for that introduction. I actually like myself now. So let me start by saying that the rumors of good banks no longer supporting and lending not-for-profits and/or trades are slightly exaggerated. I'll be the first to say no. There are banks who are pulling back, and there are banks who are not pulling back and are supporting the NFBs, trades, and whatnot. What has changed in light of changes that took place in the last 9 months in terms of who gets what, in terms of grants and whatnot, is the way we approach our analyses. So if previously the emphasis on analyses was on quantitative analyses of a potential transaction. Now the equal weight is given to the qualitative. And you know, in the interest of saving time for Q&A, if there is one, I just wanted to say what exactly is a quantitative versus qualitative analyses, so that those folks who are seeking potentially switching banks and or looking for a bank will understand what is going to be important for a lender to look at. So, I mean, obviously with the quantitative analyses, the basics, we're seeking the budget. We're looking at the previous year budget versus the what were the expenditures in the current year, fiscal year, and obviously the budget projections. Secondarily, we're going to look at financials, but it is important for us to not only look at the budget as a whole, comparative and future, but it is also equally important for us to understand what is behind the budget. What are the things that are currently driving the future budget versus current versus previous year? Obviously, and this is Gap and your CPA group, the vital importance of clarity of the financial statements. So whether it'll be annual reports, whether it'll be financial statements, the level of preparedness, the clarity, the notes are going to be, I don't want to say scrutinized, but as your group prepares those financials and we enjoy looking at them, knowing that the quality is there, it's going to be equally important for your clients to know that you deliver the quality financial statements, whether it be reviewed and audit, that the banker would be able to accept and fully rely on. And obviously, if there are any campaigns, and there are a number of campaigns, remember 501c3s fall into multiple, and not just C3s, but trades and so forth, fall into multiple categories, religious organizations, theatrical organizations, whatnot. We look at what campaign components are in place, who is running the campaign, and so on and so forth. So simple. This has to do with quantitative analysis, as always. As I mentioned, equal importance right now is going to be for us qualitative. Obviously, not just what type of organization it is, but what is the mission? What is the affiliation? Who are you being supported to? If there is a grant aggregation, who are those who are going to provide you with additional funds? again, as we saw, a lot of USAID, well, whatever's left of USAID, the things like this that may have supported the NFP are no longer there. So we will need to understand how is your mission and how is your grant aggregation, if you will, aligned, for the lack of the better words, with the current trends. We're also going to be looking at the leadership, obviously, and we always look at the 990s, but right now we're going to be looking at 990s with a greater lens, looking at, for example, how does the salary of executive stacks up within the budget. So, if I see that it's a $5 million budget and let's say $1 million goes to the exec, there will be some questions asked. Not to say that it shouldn't happen, I'm just saying. So we're also going to look at the formation, the history, and currently a reputation. So it is going to be important for us to understand that the critical issues that are facing the organization, combined with excellent reputation of the organization, do not impair it from moving forward in this volatile environment. So hot points, basically challenges of revenue growth, how we're going to be tackling those. What is the financial management behind the organization and how congruent it is with those who are supporting it, i.e. the CPA group, the audit group. Understanding clarity behind funds that may be restricted. There are some, obviously, not-for-profits that have restricted funds. Understanding at what point and how will this restriction impact the overall picture of the budget. And obviously the current legal and regulatory compliance. The last thing I would say is, there is a common statement, do not go to your bank when you really need to, go to the bank when you don't. I want to emphasize that. But more importantly, whoever your banker or bank is, build the relationship. This relationship needs to be very deep, where the banker truly understands the whole organization, not just the itty-bitty piece of it, but the entire organization. If I don't understand the organization completely, I am of no use to the organization. Anyone can do loans and deposits. Question is, can the banker bring to the table something else for you as an organization? So just make sure your relationship is solid, and I'll leave it at that.
Great. Thank you so much, Len. That's great advice. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Tina Townsend. Tina began her banking career in 1996 after completing a tour of duty in the U.S. Army. Thank you, Tina. And over nearly 3 decades, she has held leadership roles at the branch, district, and regional levels before transitioning into commercial banking. In her current role, Tina focuses on commercial deposits and treasury management, building strong relationships with nonprofits and associations across the DC metro area. Based in Alexandria, Virginia, Tina enjoys traveling, exploring historic architecture, and staying focused on health and fitness, along with spending time with her dogs, Arnold and Bruce. So, Tina, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to be here with you. One of the questions that was submitted prior to today was fraud. And when I saw that, I thought that's an excellent topic to talk on because it's something that we see more and more often, unfortunately. So I'm going to go through different types of fraud that we see, ways that you can prevent it, and then I'm going to show a short video on a product specific to protecting clients against fraud. It's less than 2 minutes long. So the most common fraud that we see is check fraud. So often we're asking our clients to use less checks or no checks because there's better ways to pay now. When you send out a check, it opens you up to depending on whose hands they fall in, check manipulation, your checks being remanufactured, altered. So there's just better ways to pay. We do recommend that you use products like Wires, ACH. ACH is an excellent vehicle to pay your clients, to pay your vendors, to pay recipients of some of your funding. But then there's also ACH fraud out there as well. The most often type of ACH fraud is when we see clients' emails get hijacked, or they receive an email from a vendor or someone that they are used to paying, and it's asking, hey, we've changed our bank. This is our new bank information. We're just updating our records. We ask that even when it seems tedious, and even when you are used to getting an email from someone all the time, maybe you correspond with this person multiple times in a week, always pick up the phone, especially if they're asking you to change the way that you're sending payments to them. Pick up the phone from a phone number that you have on record that's a known phone number, a phone number that belongs to that individual, and just verify the information. So often we'll see if that had been done, that fraud would have been absolutely impossible, because it would have been circumvented at that point. Also, when you work with an individual, let's say, you work with Susie down the hall, and she sends emails all the time that says, we need to send money to this person. Please send funding to this organization. Even though it is a common practice, have that as part of your procedure, picking up the phone or walking down the hall and just verifying the information. We've seen that happen too, where an individual believes that their CFO has asked them to send funding to an organization that this person is very familiar with. The instructions may be altered slightly, so funds are being redirected to the wrong place. And the thing about wires is that wires, those are guaranteed funds. It's almost like cash. Now, there are instances where the bank's able to contact the other institution if we're fast enough, if we know soon enough, and get some of those funds back, but not always. So having part of that, a dual authentication, following up, picking up the phone, saying, hey, Cheryl, I've got your email in front of me. Is this your intention? And just verifying the information. Because there's so much email fraud out there, emails coming in and asking individuals under your name, and it could be just a small digit in the email address that's incorrect, that's you may not notice by glancing. So verifying the information, always make that part of your practice. Verifying with your vendors. And then it was also mentioned in there, employee fraud. I would never give one person the authority to send any kind of funds. I would use a dual authentication. All banks have it, where one person keys it in, another person checks it and approves it. So giving the authority to one individual to send funds and to approve it, that just opens you up to, and even if, the dual authentication not only will prevent that, it will safeguard you against errors. We're all people, and something could be keyed in wrong. What if there's an extra zero? Having that second person there to verify exactly what is going out, safeguards. Dual authentication, and having two people in charge of anything that has to do with money, it's so important. I remember when I first started in banking, nobody had the combos Nobody had the full combo, here at the bank. You might have half, or you might have half, somebody else has half, and somebody else has a key. So just breaking up that responsibility. We do have a product called Positive Pay that is here to safeguard our clients from items coming in that they didn't write or didn't send. And I'm gonna, if it's okay with you, I'm gonna share my screen and I'm gonna play a very short video.
Sure. Lexi, is Tina able to share her screen?
Yes, I can share my screen.
No, can Tina share hers?
Yes, she can share.
Okay, great.
Okay, great. Can you see my screen? Oops.
Let's go into some of.
Wait a minute. Can you see it? It's not.
They can expense your business accounts in order to prevent any transactions.
Can everybody see my screen?
You have not
No.
pre-authorized.
You cannot.
We
There
can
you
see
go.
it
Now we
now.
can. Yes.
Yes?
Either
Can you
through
hear it?
ACH Positive Pay or check Positive Pay is one of the most
I'm gonna start.
Yes.
There we go.
So let's go into some of the tools that we can use to protect ourselves. They can really ring fence your business accounts in order to prevent any transactions hitting your account that you have not pre-authorized. I will say that Positive Pay, either through ACH Positive Pay or check Positive Pay, is one of the most ubiquitous tools that is used by businesses. It is only as good, however, as those businesses interacting with that tool. When it comes to check Positive Pay, that means that you as a business are uploading a file of the checks that you've issued. When those checks come in for clearing, the bank is cross-referencing those checks against that file and only authorizing payment if it matches what you've told us you've authorized to pay. Payee Positive Pay takes that to the next level because instead of just looking at the checking account, the dollar amount, and the check number, we're also going to do best case to look at the payee name of that check as well. So that if it was washed, the person or company that was made out to has been altered. Those are extremely effective. You also could block your account completely from debits, or you can have a filter to make sure that only some of the transactions that you've authorized get through. They are way more effective and are certainly going to cost much less than the debit transactions that could be hitting against your account.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Tina. And
You're welcome. Thank you.
that I know that that's been a big question for a lot of our clients, how to protect against fraud. And as CPAs, we love talking about segregating duties. So that is a hot topic that we talk about. So I'm glad to see that. I will go ahead now and share my screen again quickly. So thank you again, Tina and Len and Jeff. And those were great talks that you gave. And I'm sure that there are lots of questions that people have. So now I would really love to just open it up to the audience. Are there any areas that you'd like us to expand upon right now, or any other questions that you have? So please feel free to either just ask, or you can type it in the chat if you prefer. And then, okay, I don't see anyone. We do have a list of online questions that we got as well. So I'll kick it off and then you guys can think about if there are any other questions you'd like to address. So the first question that we received in advance, and I have to say it is near and dear to my heart, because the question is how to manage to the board expectations and how to improve staff and board relations when the board goes quote unquote off the rails. Those are not my words. But I will say from my vantage point, it is largely about board education, making sure that we're providing the right information to the board. And this is certainly a timely topic right now in this area of uncertainty. My partners and I have actually been giving talks about board engagement, education, how to prepare effective board presentations. And Jeff, I know that you have thoughts to share about this topic as well.
Yeah, Heather, it's certainly an issue that we deal with quite often. There being kind of a disconnect between the board and the senior leadership, especially the CEO or executive director of the nonprofit organization. And while certainly board education is part of it's one of the tools in the toolbox to deal with these issues, in my experience, it's far from the only thing. Education is important. Probably 2 to 3 times a month, I'm doing some sort of a nonprofit board governance and legal training session, kind of explaining to board members, whether it's the whole board, whether it's the new board members, both things like what does it mean to be a board member of a tax-exempt nonprofit organization? What's the difference between the nonprofit corporate status and your federal tax-exempt status? What sort of limitations and prohibitions does that impose on the organization that you need to know as a board member as you're making decisions? What's the proper role of the board versus the role of staff, and why it's important and how to stay in your lane, so to speak. If it's a membership association, what's the role of the board versus the role of members, and how are those rights allocated, particularly within the bylaws as well as the applicable state nonprofit corporation statute? What are your fiduciary duties, care, loyalty, and obedience? What do those really mean in practice? Giving real life examples, and then usually talking about how board members can protect themselves from personal liability risk and all the protections that are built in there. And that's really important. But like I said, I think it's more than that. I think it's very good communication, particularly between the CEO and if there's an executive committee or if it's a small board, having regular communication. It's very typical, common for at least the chair of the board to meet with the CEO, once every other week, things like that, and making sure that the CEO is very transparent with the board, or at least the executive committee, and everything that's going on and why, if there are changes, if there are new wrinkles, hurdles that pop up, threaten lawsuits, threaten employee claims, things like that you keep the board, or at least the executive committee, informed. But another important tool, and we deal with this in the employment contracts for the CEO, is that it's really important that there be a process every year where the CEO sits down with whoever's designated by the board to serve this function, and they agree, like an executive committee or the top officers or whomever, where they sit down and they agree on the goals and objectives that the CEO is charged with for the year. And that's really important because the CEO wants to manage against those goals and expectations so that he or she knows that, yes, we are achieving what is important to the board this year, not just what I think is most important. And then, the contract should also say that the CEO's performance will be evaluated based on the overall organization performance, but how he or she achieve those goals and objectives at the end of the year. So I think those are all important things that can be really helpful to improving that relationship.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jeff. I will say we just received another question for you in the chat from Andrea. It says, are there any recommendations related to DEI programming based on the current administration? Perhaps changing the name of the programs, but serving similar program mission?
Yeah, so it's a great question. In all of the dozens of DEI related reviews that we've done for our nonprofit clients in the last few months, we generally will distinguish between the legal risks and the non-legal risks. The legal risks for nonprofits generally in the DEI space come from 3 areas. One is federal funds, because you're under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of '64. You're not allowed to use federal funds in any way that discriminates on the basis of race, color, or national origin. And that, as we all know these days, includes reverse discrimination. Employment, where employment, Title VII of the Federal Civil Rights Act of '64 makes it illegal to discriminate in all sorts of employment practices, or discriminate on the basis of a whole multitude of protected characteristics. And then the third is what I mentioned earlier, Section 1981 of the original Civil Rights Act of 1866 that makes it illegal to discriminate in contracting on the basis of race, and that includes grants and scholarships. Those are the primary areas of legal risk. But what we're seeing is a lot of non-legal risk, particularly, and for this group, it's appropriate, business and financial risk, right? Even reputational and targeting risk and trying to mitigate those sorts of risks. And what we're seeing with respect to DEI content at conferences and meetings is that, for instance, we've had a number of clients who are federal workers, federal employees, whether they're like NIH scientists or others, or DoD employees that are coming to a military association conference. They've said, you have to certify to us that you have no DEI content at your conference, or we're not allowed to attend. We're seeing the same thing coming from other would-be attendees. We're seeing, these are all real life examples, the same thing coming from sponsors and exhibitors of conferences saying we are going to withhold our sponsorship or our exhibit fees or our advertising fees if you don't eliminate the DEI content at your conference. And so while there's really no discernible legal risk from having DEI content at a conference, at least none to date. Always keep an eye on the state laws, by the way. There are a number of state laws that states have a lot more legal ability to regulate things than the federal government does. And we're seeing, particularly some politically red states, we're seeing bills being introduced and executive orders being contemplated that can go further than what the federal government can do. Like, for instance, there's a law in Florida. It's currently on hold through the federal appellate court system, but it makes it illegal to provide basically any DEI related training to staff. Anti-discrimination, anti-harassment, unconscious bias training, things like that. And it includes remote staff that work in Florida. Like I said, that law is on hold. That's not something where we see at the federal level, but it is something at the state level. So you got to keep an eye at the states. But bottom line, to answer that question, while it's not a legal risk, it's a very real business and financial risk for the organization, and something you really have to seriously consider. And what we always tell our clients is you got to balance your core values and principles and what really matters the most to you against your risk tolerance, and balance those things to try to figure out what's most important to do. We've had some clients that are digging their heels in, and they said, there's no way in hell we're eliminating the DEI content from our conferences. We're not going to just rename it or try to bury it in other sessions like some of our clients are doing. And there are others who are saying, look, this is stuff is really important to us, but we don't need to have a big red flag out there. There are ways we can still do this without drawing as much attention to it.
What about we have several clients that are think tanks, and part of what they do is write about what's the tariffs or the new things that are coming out of the administration. And we know that 501c3s obviously cannot be politically active, but do you see any risks now with even just writing about those topics in general?
Mm-hmm.
Well, first off, keep in mind that C3 organization, and most think tanks are C3s in my experience, they're prohibited from engaging in any political campaign activity. That means supporting or opposing candidates for public office or supporting political parties. But they are not prohibited from engaging in policy advocacy or even legislative advocacy. C3s are limited in how much lobbying they can do. But if you make the 501H election, that just means legislative lobbying only. And lobbying has a very precise definition if you make the 501H election. And for instance, writing about, the president's, tariff policies and whatnot wouldn't even, as a C3, would not even constitute lobbying if you make the 501H election. So you have to drill down into the details of exactly what's going on. And even if it is lobbying, doesn't mean you can't do it. So from a purely legal and tax perspective, what you described doesn't pose any real problems from my perspective. But again, from a targeting perspective, we know that this administration, for however you want to describe it, has an enemies list that includes nonprofits. We've even heard some folks being quoted from the White House saying that, part of that enemies list includes any nonprofit that signs on to a lawsuit against the administration. And so is there potential business or financial, potential loss of federal funds, loss of, think tanks get a lot of big donors that will, whether it's foreign governments or others that will, pay money to do research and write papers in certain areas. And due to the risk of alienating folks like that, or even becoming a target of the administration, we have certainly seen some nonprofits think twice about what they write and what they say. I'm not suggesting this is a right or wrong or a good or bad thing. It's just what's going on, and it's the reality of the world we live in right
Thank you. Len, did you have something to add? Or did I imagine that?
No, no, it's just to be a little bit to follow up what Jeff said and to be a little bit more practical on what Andrea asked. So yes, quote unquote, presuming lender liability prevents us from dictating how our clients, be it for or not for profit. We have noticed and we have worked with our clients in terms of ensuring their viability of forthcoming contracts and or grants and whatnot. And what we have seen is, Jeff said, not scrubbing, but we have seen clients truly going through every word of their capabilities, of their presentation, of their website, of their printed material, and eliminating words that at first may seem silly, such as education, such as womanhood, and so on and so forth, only because there is a realization that there are not folks sitting there with their eyes open to the screen looking through everything. No, there's algorithms who are trained to act upon certain words and certain triggers. So, and it doesn't apply just not for profits, it applies for profits. We have a lot of GovCons in our portfolio who are going through the very same thing. So, yes, not like we're encouraging our clients to do this because we really can't, but we share this experience with them, basically, and they act on it.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you. I have another online question, unless anybody on the roundtable would like to ask one. Okay, so let's see. Another question is what areas of risk and compliance are you seeing as up and coming with the new Big Beautiful Bill tax law? And is it a wait and see until the reconciliation bill passes in the fall of 2025? And I know Deep, you were, Deep is our tax manager. You were prepared to answer this question, right?
Yes, thanks, Heather. So regarding the one big beautiful bill, so it's still sort of in wait and see mode, because there could possibly be further changes during 2025. But I can tell you right now that certain laws related to charitable giving, when it comes to individual charitable giving and corporate donations, are have become law, and then and the laws related to excise tax on executive compensation, and then the excise tax on endowments for universities have been put into place.
Great, thank you. Okay. Oh, here we go. Question for Len. You mentioned the importance of clarity in the financial disclosures. Is there a common issue you find missing or confusing in the financial statements?
Well, the most common one that we find, if it has not been properly prepared, is, believe it or not, incongruence of the balance sheet. If it doesn't balance, can't call it a balance sheet. So little things like this. But
none of us could sleep at night if that happens.
Absolutely, absolutely. But then it goes back to the reputation of those who represent your financials. Are you dealing with a specialty group like Han or a larger institution? Sometimes, it is okay to spend a couple more dollars to ensure that you're very attractive in the eyes of a financial institution. So as far as clarity of the financials, that would be the biggest thing. Now, also, as it applies to a 501c3, it is important for us to see the financial presented in a manner that does segregate restricted and unrestricted funds. With notes, I teach my team always, okay, you look at the balance sheet, you look at the P&L, those are the first pages of the audit and or review, but then go to the notes and start reading about the company because it's going to be far more revealing. So we'll need to understand that clearly. And obviously, typically we do see a budget that comes in with the financial statements, and we kind of put them together. If there is incongruence between what was kind of projected to be no budget in advance is perfect, but if there is much deviation, we will seek understanding as to what these deviations stem from. Hope this helps.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Great. Well, another question was, are there any new reporting requirements for not-for-profits that will go into effect in the next 2 years? So I'd like to invite our senior audit manager, Dave Nazari, to answer this question and also let us know about anything else that we should be thinking about.
Thanks, Heather. David Nazari with the Han Group. I'm having some technical difficulties with my background, but definitely happy to represent the Han Group as well as the nonprofit community. So there are about 4 items that are coming up that could impact your financial statements. None of them are as significant as like the more recent lease standard that affect everybody. These are going to be, if your organization engages in certain activities, then you'll be on the lookout for these things. So the first one is federal grants. If you have a year end that ends on 9/30/2025 or later, there's some new rules with the federal grants. The threshold for a single audit is increasing. So it used to be $750,000 of federal expenditures. That's getting increased to $1 million. It's important to note, regardless if you need a single audit or not, you're still required to be in compliant with all the rules. So as soon as you take $1 of federal awards from the federal government, you need to make sure your policies are up to date with all the new rules. And as far as new rules, this is probably a good opportunity to review your compliance policies. One of the more significant changes is a change in the indirect cost rate. It used to be a de minimis rate of 10%, and that's getting increased to 15%. Another area, this is probably less common amongst our clients, but they're starting in 2025. If your organization has crypto assets, and that's going to be if you hold the crypto assets, not if you just receive them and liquidate them, but the policy for how you value crypto assets is going to change. I think most nonprofits are too risk adverse to hold crypto assets, but I think this is a good opportunity to review gift policies. See if your gift policy explicitly states whether or not you accept crypto assets, and then if you do, whether or not you immediately liquidate them. The third one is related to if your organization has accounts receivables. So that's going to not include your contributions to grants receivables, but your accounts receivables. So that would be from like program revenue. There's a recent standard for credit losses, so how you evaluate the collectability of those accounts receivables. And there's a practical expedia that goes into effect 2026, but I think a lot of people will start early adopting it. And they just have a simplified approach for analyzing that allowance. So now you can look at collections after year end and use that to estimate your allowance. And then the last one, effective 2026, is income tax disclosures. So if your organization pays UBIT, unrelated business income tax, there's going to be some expanded financial statement disclosures on tax rate, carryovers, etc. So I think that's in the next 2 years all that I came up with, Heather.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dave. And I have to say, I know Jamie and I are so excited about the increased threshold for 1099s. So that will, starting in 2026, that increases to $2,500. So very excited about that.
And I would just add, if any of the organizations do have any of those things, please reach out to us where we can give you more details and we can help you work through those disclosures.
And there's some new accounting around software too, right, Dave? Coming out.
That's effective 2028. Yeah. So I think you said the question was
Okay.
within 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, wonderful. Well, great. So I would like to see if there are any final questions. Actually, Len and Tina, I am curious. Dave mentioned the crypto assets. Do you see any nonprofits getting crypto and keeping it? I think the ones I've seen, they sell it right away. I'm wondering if you have any that keep it.
And maybe Tina may attest, may speak more to it because she sees much more in depository services. But see, we're risk managers, and what I have seen is nothing yet in the balance sheet. So far, so good. I'm not saying crypto is bad, but all 501c3s have a fiduciary obligation of preservation, balanced risk of their funds, be it endowment and whatnot. So, which brings actually an excellent point. It is important as you discuss with your bank and bankers, what are the capabilities they can offer to ensure that you do have ability to preserve while earning on your funds. And some banks have certain tools. We have certain tools that allow larger depositors to ensure that they're FDIC insured without going from one bank to another. But the short answer to your question is, I personally have not yet seen crypto. And if I do on the balance sheet, I will be more scrupulous about how to approach this particular prospect.
Right. Same. I don't hear much about crypto actually from my clients. The product that Len was mentioning, we do have an insured cash sweep, which is many boards require, especially nonprofits, to have full FDIC insurance, and the insured cash sweep sweeps out in $250,000 increments to other banks. And that's a managed process. It's done through the IntraFi network, but that falls under one umbrella. They receive one statement. It used to be, the old days, they would carry the $250,000 to each bank. Not necessary anymore. The bank does require a full banking relationship, so the bank relationship has to be here at the bank before we offer it. But it is a product out there, and it's fairly new over the last few years.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, well, with that, I am going to share one more screen, and I want to say thank you again to Jeff, Tina, and Len for joining us, and to our Hung Group experts too. And I hope that everyone who's attended enjoyed the session today. I know it was a lot of information in a short period of time, so we'd love to follow up and continue any of these conversations. I'd also love to hear ideas for future roundtables if anyone has topics that they'd like to see us cover. And I will let you know I am excited for our December roundtable. We're going to be centering it around the economy and what we are expecting to see for 2026. And I'd also like to take a minute to invite everyone to our webinar that we're holding next month on October 21st around the ethics of fundraising. So ethics are an integral part of what we CPAs do. So we're excited to team up with our expert fundraiser, Jennifer Dotson, during the Association of Fundraising Professionals Ethics Awareness Month and talk about what happens when money and mission collide. So please feel free to join us for that. And with that, I'm just going to say a thank you again to everyone. Please feel free to scan the code, join our nonprofit community. We're so happy to have you here. And I've included an email. We all have our individual information that we will send out. We'll be sending out a white paper kind of summary with all of our speakers' contact information. And you can also send just a general question to this learn@hongroup.llc.com email as well. So thanks again, everyone. I appreciate you spending your lunch break with us.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you
Thank
so much.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.